Welcome to Art Loves Fashion. I'm your host, Davila-Irving. I'm an image consultant, professional developer, art curator and collector, a wife and a mom. This show, Art Loves Fashion, is about, you guessed it, art, love, and fashion. We'll be meeting new people, trying interesting things, and hopefully learning something new. Sounds kind of vague, right? That's because I want you to join me on Sundays at 5 o'clock as we take a journey of all things creative and beautiful with art, loves, fashion. Hello, welcome to Art Loves Fashion. I am your host, Davila-Irving, and this show is about all things creative and beautiful. I am so excited to be with you
Yeah, boy,
again
I can
another
hear.
Sunday. Today we have some special guests, and the show is going to be slightly different, but I promise you it will be a great show. I want to let you know right now that I'm going to be sharing some important resources with you, so you may want to either get a pencil and paper, or later on after the live stream, you'll be able to go to my YouTube channel and rewatch the show to get more information. So, without further ado, um, I want to introduce you. Well, I want to introduce my guest because I like to let them be a part of the show, even when I'm talking about some of the other segments. So today I have my friends Raziya Hogans and Terry. Terry, I know your last name.
Williams.
Terry Williams.
Williams.
Terry Williams and Raziya Hogans. They are soon to be Mr. and Mrs. Terry Williams. Um, I brought them on today to talk about love because, as you guys know, we've been talking a lot about how folks are managing their relationships and managing love during this time of the shutdown. And so we've talked a little bit in the past about self-love and self-care. We've talked a little bit about marriages. We've talked about people who are living together. Um, whether it be children and roommates and that kind of thing, but we have been having lots of ongoing conversation about how we're managing our relationship. And so Terry and Raziya have agreed to come on today to talk with us about their relationship. They're currently engaged. But before we jump into that, I want to share with you a little bit of, I want to start with a little bit of art because today I was inspired, or yesterday I was inspired as I was watching the news and watching all the protests and watching everything that is going on, um, thinking about what are the various ways that people have been resisting and surviving and fighting against some of the forms of oppression that we're seeing in the Black community, fighting against police brutality, and so on and so forth. And so I really could not let this week go past without weighing in, without sharing resources, without being a part of the conversation. And so as I was doing that, I thought about, so I'm a child who was brought up during the time of like nationalism, during the time of the Pan-Africanist movement, during the time when there was a lot of political action on behalf of Black people. And so I was raised in a community of people who were definitely very much on the front lines of the fight for Black people. And so I could not, um, my family would not allow this weekend to go past without me really being able to contribute something to the dialogue or to the conversation around what's going on. And so as I was doing that, I was reflecting on what were some of the things that our parents and foremothers and forefathers were doing during the 60s and the 70s as they were fighting against all the forms of oppression going on at that time. And I wanted to do a bit of a comparison. And so within art, I really kind of started thinking about that and doing a little bit of research. And I came across a poem that I wanted to start the show off with because I thought it was quite ironic and I thought it was quite timely. Now, I don't normally read poems and do all that kind of thing, but I absolutely had to because if you are up on current events, the news is toggling between COVID-19, what's going on with the protests against police brutality, and the space launch. And so the very, very, the infamous Gil Scott Heron has a poem called Whitey on the Moon. So I'm gonna put on my spoken word hat, and I want to recite this poem to you guys. I wanted to play it because normally I like to just expose my audience to the actual art that I'm talking about, but it has music in the background, and so what will happen sometimes is that it will get blocked. So I'm gonna say the word. And in my head, I'm channeling Gil Scott Heron. If you're not familiar with him, as I always say, I like to share information. I like to share something that inspires you to go and do a little bit more research and turn you on to something that you may or may not be familiar with. So it's called Whitey on the Moon. A rat done bit my sister Nell with Whitey on the moon. Her face and arms began to swell, and Whitey's on the moon. I can't pay no doctor bill, but Whitey's on the moon. 10 years from now, I'll be paying still while Whitey's on the moon. The man just upped my rent last night, 'cause Whitey's on the moon. No hot water, no toilets, no light, but Whitey's on the moon. I wonder why he's upping me, 'cause Whitey's on the moon. I was already paying him $50 a week with Whitey on the moon. Tax is taking my whole damn check. Junkies making me a nervous wreck. The price of food is going up, and as if all that shit wasn't enough, a rat done bit my sister Nell with Whitey on the moon. Her face and arm began to swell, but Whitey's on the moon. Was all that money I made last year for Whitey on the moon? How come there ain't no money here? Whitey's on the moon. Y'all know I just about had my fill of Whitey on the moon. I think I'll send these doctor bills. Airmail special to Whitey on the moon. Snap.
And you were very dramatic and afflictions.
So
I love it.
So I had to, in the spirit of art and how art
Yes.
Also tends to be a support to the movements that the people have going on. I wanted to start the show off with that so I can set the tone and let everybody know that that's what Art, Love, and Fashion is talking about today. We're talking about what's going on in the streets. We're talking about what's going on in the community. And because of who I was raised by, my plan is to share information with you and resources with you so that you can get involved. And so, with that, I'm going to go ahead and transition because I'll talk a little bit more about art later and I'll share some resources with you a little bit later. But I would like to honor my guests and honor their time, Miss Raziya and Mr. Terry. I'm going to let them tell their story. So if you guys would be so kind as just to tell me about how the two of you met.
Would you like me to go?
So they're engaged. This would be good practice because the husband have to figure out the balance of the wife who likes to talk and all that. Terry, I'm Team Terry.
Oh, what's ironic about your question is,
but how did you guys meet?
What's ironic about your question is we just had to answer this about 3 weeks ago with our first counseling, premarital counseling. So go ahead, Terry.
So So basically, we met a couple of years ago at CIAA. Um, so I decided to go down one weekend. Um, my friends and I, and we kind of met Pastel and Razia at a day party, and then the next day we went to a restaurant and kind of talked and things of that nature for a long time. We've been in there for about an hour, almost 2 hours, just talking. And then I walked them to the car. Or both, myself and my friend walked them to the car, and she said, "Well, if you want to call me sometime, you can call me." And when I made it back to South Carolina, um, I told my friend, I said, "I wonder did they make it safely?" So I text them to check on her, and then I called her, and then I just asked her. I said, "Well, is it possible I can call you sometimes?" And she said yes. So that's kind of how it
Well,
went.
that must have been some good conversation, Mr. Terry, because this is CIAA, right? That means it's a lot of parties, a lot of folks mixing and mingling, and she stayed in a restaurant, and you had her captivated for an hour to 2 hours. That was some good conversation.
I never thought about it that way, but that is a good
Yes,
point.
that's some
I
good
never thought
conversation.
about it that way.
And so then,
Mm.
so Terry, you at that time where were you living?
Current At that time, I was living in Columbia, South Carolina.
And
I
Raziya,
was,
you were living in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
at the time. Okay. And so then, as you guys, once you called her, she said it was okay to call. You all started to develop a long distance phone relationship. Now, was
Hmm.
FaceTime and that kind of thing around when you all first started talking?
Was
it was,
FaceTime? Yeah.
it
He's not a
was.
part of the elite club of iPhone users.
So
We have an inside joke.
how did you keep the communication going?
Oh, it was more
We talked
phone.
every day. We literally talked every day. Um, and after about 3 months of talking, I think you flew down. You flew. You flew down.
No, actually, it was probably exactly a month after meeting that I came out.
You
Oh,
came down. Okay.
Yeah.
okay, a month. He was trying to be generous he was trying to,
That's what was. Okay. Thank you
be
for
a
I.
gentleman. So you got to South Carolina and you guys decided that you really were interested in pursuing a relationship at that point?
Yeah. It was. Um. Can I go on, or because I know
Yeah.
you want to hear the male talk? Actually, before prior to me going to CIAA, I think it was like August, CIAA that February, in August of the prior year, I actually had turned to Pastel. I said to her, I said, we're going to be our husbands at CIAA. It just came out. It was nothing. It just something inside of me just came out. There was no thought. I left it right there on the table, walked away from it, didn't think anything else about it. So once Terry and I met and we started talking literally the first week, she said to me, for some reason, he seemed like the type of man that you will marry.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, it never really still hit. It was like a night, it was just a flow, if that makes sense to you.
No, that makes sense because
Mm-hmm.
when I went, I tell people all the time when I went on the first date with my husband, I told
Mm-hmm.
my roommate that I was going to marry him.
Really?
Yeah,
And then y'all come 20 years this year, right?
yeah, and it'll be 20 years this month. So
Mm.
sometimes you just kind of know.
Yeah. You know.
And so,
Should I let the secret out? I have to say this one. I don't turn
but
it
go
away.
ahead.
He said, "I love you." The third day of us talking, he texts me, "I love you."
Oh,
I text him back and said, I think you sent a text message to the wrong person. And I was okay with it. Like I was like, I
Right.
just met him. I'm okay.
Yeah.
And then he texts back and spelled my name properly on top of that, okay?
Okay.
He said, Raziya, I love you. And I said, what the hell? I threw the phone, walked away from the phone. He had been calling me. I had to go for a walk. Then I said, okay, get yourself together. Because I hope is he expecting me to say that back? I hope he don't expect me to say it back. And then when I got on the phone with him, because he had been calling me, and I said, he said, I don't need you to respond to what I said. He said, but you can't tell me how I feel.
Wow. Okay.
I said, okay.
Okay.
I just said, okay.
Okay. I love that.
Yeah, I said it.
They say, if a man, when he is interested, he will stamp it and put it out there. So,
It's true.
he proved that to be true.
Yeah.
So fast forward. So now how long ago was that?
5 years ago.
5 years.
A little over 5 years.
Yep.
Yeah.
5 years.
5. Mm-hmm.
So now interestingly, so the 5 years pretty much has been a long distance relationship.
Yes. Because remember, he was in Abu Dhabi for 2 years too.
Okay, so you were in Abu Dhabi for 2 years. You were in South Carolina. Are you still in South Carolina?
I'm currently in Augusta, Georgia right now.
Okay, so that's further away, isn't it?
No,
just an hour
South
from
Carolina, right beside each other.
Okay.
From Columbia, it's about an hour away.
Okay.
So he's currently in our new home in Augusta. He's currently in our new home.
Oh, so you guys, okay, so the listeners, the audience doesn't know where you are with it now. So fast forward 5 years, you guys are now engaged. And so you were moving forward with your wedding plans and had a date and had a venue and all these things. And so you guys picked out a house and everything.
Well, not a house. I'm talking about just our place together.
Okay, so
not a home, not a house, but just a place together. This is our first time with a.
And so now now with this pandemic, what does this look like?
Wedding plans, of course.
Go ahead.
Okay, Go ahead, wedding plans been pushed to next year. Wedding plans. However, we're going to move forward with getting married this year.
I love it. So first of all, that is such good news. I am so excited. I cannot wait till later on to hear what you guys are going to do. So amazing. And really, a lot of people are choosing to do that. They're like, we're going to go forward with our plan. So Terry, though, you were getting ready to say something when I said, what does it look like now with the coronavirus? You were saying something.
Well, like Raziya was saying, we're moving forward with the wedding, but we're not. The wedding will probably be next year with the ceremony, but we're actually getting married in New Jersey this year, but it's going to be very small because of the the COVID virus. So it'll probably be about 20, 25 people at the max, and we'll have to, do all the protocols that the CDC wants, the distancing and stuff like that. But we still will have a wedding this year.
That's amazing. So now what I'm curious about, because I've been talking a lot about the things that we do, to take care of one another, to demonstrate our love. We talked about, agape love and just how we are taking care of one another in relationship over this time. How are you guys? How do you manage the relationship and the intimacy over, the distance like that? Because I think it's interesting because some people are just quarantined from one another, or some people are just like, they haven't been able to see each other for a couple of weeks, and they're like, how do I do this? So what are some things that you guys have done just over time to just care for one another and maintain that level of love and intimacy and relationship over the distance?
Well, I think the hardest part was when I was overseas for 2 years. That was much more harder than when I was stateside now. Because
Mm-hmm.
stateside now, we kind of come up with the idea, hey, every month or every other month, I'll come see you, you come see me. And so it won't be hard on each one of us, seeing each other and stuff like that. When I was overseas, I think it was much more harder because I couldn't just come home like that. It was, I think I only came home twice a year. So it was, that was pretty hard for me
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes she be going through, as a person go through stuff, but I couldn't be there to comfort her and stuff.
And so that was the thing that I think I was also curious about, especially in light of so much going on. How do you support one another, um, given the
Mm-hmm.
circumstances? Because now, like, it's probably, I mean, are you able to go? Prior to this, you could just jump on a plane or jump on a train or whatever, drive,
Mhm.
see one another. And so now, with things being slightly restricted, how is it for you guys communicate?
Well, but now I think that we still talk or we'll kind of like FaceTime each other and talk that way. And um, most of the time, Razia even sometimes she'll just get in the car and drive down instead of using the.
Yeah.
It's some different ways she's very creative in trying to make sure that we have that connection and
Yeah.
be together.
Yeah.
Nice.
We're doing more WhatsApp and everything. We never video chat the way we did. So what's important to me is that he see my face. We see each other every day. Because very early on when COVID happened, when we were talking about, it's like everything shut down March 13th. We had already had plans to see each other in April. And it was interesting because I can hear in his voice that he was kind of feeling alone because remember a lot of us was getting a lot of anxiety. So
Mm-hmm.
I can hear it in him and he didn't realize it. And I kept saying I gotta get down there to him. I gotta get down there to him because he needs some love. And I just knew I needed to be there because he see his parents like at least every weekend or every other weekend, let's say that. He wasn't going to his parents. His parents was like 2 hours away. So it was kind of like he was literally alone. So I had I went down there for about 10 days or so and cooked him his meals because that's one of his favorite things. What I tend to do so I can make sure he's eating healthy, I cook him about 30 or 40 meals and put them in the freezer,
Wow.
and label them. And he, by the way, are you finished your meals, baby?
I, I'm on.
You avoided eating them beans. I already know it. But so, but that's what I do. So, right now where we are, I kind of do like my major move in a couple of weeks. And what happens is from that point on, it's kind of like every month because it's very, very important to me that I cook his food for him. Terry's not a cook. I'm trying to teach him how to cook over WhatsApp.
Oh, okay.
But
How's that going?
if I can get him in the kitchen, he can be stubborn sometimes, Shonda.
Would you say you can what?
He can be stubborn sometimes.
Stubborn?
He can be stubborn sometimes. I'm like, the season is in the freezer season. You just got to put on a George Foreman. And once he get an air fryer, it's gonna be on. So,
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah,
Hold on one second.
okay.
Like so you guys know, and I sometimes have to talk to the audience and tell them, sometimes technical little things come about. But so that's so interesting. So Terry, she sees you. So that what I'm hearing is like not only just sort of making sure that you're seeing one another every day and sort of connecting every day.
Mm-hmm.
The other part of it is like you're saying that you really try to key in and listen for
Mm-hmm.
things that may not be being said.
Exactly.
And just kind of being in tune with what the person needs so that you can try to sort of still be,
Yeah.
you still have a way to sort of support their needs and meet their needs.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that was one of the benefits of being long distance, because that intuitive side, that sense tend to strengthen more.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, you got to know what's not being said or how a person is feeling. And sometimes Terry called me, he said, baby, you be scaring me sometimes. You figure out my thoughts. And then he'll say, but he don't know sometimes what he does the same thing for me. And
Uh-huh.
I just don't necessarily actually verbalize as much as he does. But I
Mm-hmm.
think being long distance strengthen that intuitive side of us when it comes to dealing with one another.
That's interesting. So,
Mm-hmm.
so one of the things that I always try to on the show, I talk a little bit about whatever my guests come to share with me about, or whatever um, I'm sharing with the audience. I always think about like, so what's the takeaway? And I think that's a really big takeaway:
Mm-hmm.
listening for what's not being said,
Yes.
um, and then trying to help meet that need, or help to support a person in some of those ways that are unspoken.
Yes.
And I'm like, and you over here cooking 30 meals, like, that's just slow clap,
I got the carry out containers.
slow clap for Raziya cooking 30 meals.
Well, you got a big pot of beans. You get about 6 to 7 meals out of that. Big thing of spaghetti, some salmon, some chicken. I mean, he be cooking, and I cook things for him that I never necessarily eat. Like I do some red meat for him. Because I would do the same thing from with my son. I would do the same thing for him. I may not eat because I only eat fish or
Yeah,
seafood.
yeah,
But if they like something, when you have somebody you love, you know how that is.
yeah.
You want to see them smile. Bless you.
So now, um, this is the thing that I wanted to ask, and perhaps you too, Terry. Terry, have you ever? Well, let me not ask that. I know that Razia, you have not been married before.
No. Mm-mm.
And so I was wondering, about, there's a lot of women who have gotten to a certain age where, or they're past the age where they thought that they would have been married by now. And
Mm-hmm.
so you guys are the example of still being able to find love regardless of age.
Yes.
What's that like?
Actually, I'm just realizing I'm middle aged now. To be honest with you, I mean, it's kind of weird sometimes. And then I see how people can get stuck in certain ages. It's not until your body tell you, or when you need a nap or something, you realize that, oh, I can't do that anymore.
So your
Oh,
knees
I'm this
start
age.
doing some.
Yeah, but I would say this: one familiar. A lot of my immediate circle, my close girlfriends, are just getting married for the first time also.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like we're like the 40 plus married clan. I don't know if what you want to call it. So, and it's a good feeling because you know what you want at this age. You can't play games. You just know what you want and you're okay with it. And Terry will tell you, I guess me being a northerner also, he always go, you just straightforward. You just shoot it straight, right? So, and I mean, and it's just, after 40, you just know what you want. And I'm sure we all can testify to that. You know what you want. And that's just the bottom line. And I think a lot of that also had to do with the fact that, I have a child. So not realizing at that time that I was really missing out as far as that companionship and marriage. I know you need companionship, but it's sometimes when you're a single mom and you're just doing things, you don't even realize it. Then you look up your child grown, and you're like, because like I never wanted to have one child, and it was just so interesting. When I looked up, I was like, wait a minute, he's grown. I'm this age, and so that can also kind of, I don't know if I would want to say lose sight of the vision that you had. I don't know if that's what I want to say, but you're dealing with what's in front of you. In other words,
your vision changes.
yes, the
Well, like,
vision changes.
that's a good way to put it. You're dealing with what's in front of you.
Yes.
With the new vision.
Yes, the new vision, exactly.
Yeah.
And then
here comes Terry riding in on the white horse at CIAA.
Exactly.
Hey girl, how you doing?
Look,
you put the Southern gentleman drawl on you. You can hear that he's a gentleman.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
You know, I call our theme is city girl, country boy, and that's country with a cat.
So now, you guys will be getting married in Jersey, and then postponing the full wedding until next year. And so, will you be doing a Zoom thing for the first wedding, or will you just keep it intimate? How are you gonna? There's so many things.
That wasn't my plan. We may have to think about that, baby. Well, it really wasn't my plans to do, because what I was going to do was the small, intimate one in Jersey, and then actually on 10/10, the actual wedding date, I was going to do some. We were going to do some like Zoom with the bridal party. We may actually Zoom with I mean, we have to look at how to do that. To Zoom with the actual.
You're gonna go ahead and have a ceremony, an intimate ceremony, and then proceed traditionally later on.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a year of just a lot of fun.
So did I get
premarital fun stuff?
I think did I get a sneak peek?
About what?
Was that breaking news? Not really.
Yeah. It was breaking news. It was breaking news. When you think about it, it was breaking news. Because so it was just important because my dad. I think my dad would be 82 in June, our birthday month, and my grandmother she'd be 102. So I just kind of was. I also always.
Well, so you guys are gonna go ahead. So you're moving the wedding up.
So we're doing August.
Oh, that's breaking news to me. So we decided that since you aren't doing the full traditional wedding, you're going to go ahead and move it up, and then you're going to
August.
Okay, and then are you moving?
More towards the end of the year. Once I wrap up things towards the end of the year. So we're gonna do the August, the traditional small ceremony this summer. Then October we're gonna do a Zoom, like kind of fun, something we're gonna come up with something creative to do with the bridal party, and then Memorial weekend. See, Terry being quiet on this part. See, because what you tell your mother the date was.
I have to put the secrets out.
Okay, but no. So then we're doing it next year.
So you move the wedding up, and you're postponing the traditional wedding, and then you're going to be moving together in the latter part of the year.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So I wish you all of God's blessings upon your marriage, upon your union. I am excited for you guys.
Thank you.
I am inspired by your commitment to one another. Commitment is commitment, but you have something that is a little different from what other people have, and so sometimes when you are looking for support from the community, you all are doing it in a non-traditional way, and I applaud you guys for doing that, and I look forward to all of the wonderful marriage newlywed stories
Okay.
that are soon to come. And I thank you, Mr. Terry, for joining. It's not
I have a question.
to see you and talk to you. Yes, you said you had a question. Go ahead.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, Miss 20 Year, what's the secret to long lasting marriage?
There is no secret. The secret is that it is a commitment,
Okay.
and that it is the thing that I have learned. Number one, you never stop learning. You never stop growing. You never stop. You always have to um, find a way to make sure that you are nurturing and working on the health of your relationship. Um, but at the end of the day, you have to walk into it being sure about the commitment that you have made. Because I think that the thing that is unsexy and not often talked about is that there is a part of marriage that doesn't really have a lot to do with all the like warm and fuzzy that we feel or that we see on TV. There's a lot of things that are just a part of being in a relationship with another human being. And once you enter into a relationship with another human being, now it's about trying to figure out how to honor the fact that you have committed to staying in a relationship.
Okay.
And so you're growing and you're learning them, you're learning yourself, and you're learning each other together. Because now it's who are you as an individual, who is the other person as an individual, and now who are you together?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A lot of compromise and a lot of
received.
Yes. And you know what I would also say is be in a community of other married people.
Gotcha.
Yeah, they told me, yes.
Gotcha.
Be in community with other married people who are supportive of you and you are supportive of them.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
All righty. Thank you.
Got you. And you know, you can always call me Mr. Terry. You can always call me. I'm sure you want to hear it from a different perspective. So, but again, I thank you guys for joining me today. You're welcome to stay on because I'm going to be sharing some resources about how we can help and stay involved in what's going on in our communities. You're welcome to stay on as I transition into the other love section. I said instead normally it's art, love, and fashion. Today is art, love, and love.
Okay. And you are live also, correct?
Yeah, I'm on live. So you can also, if you want to, you can just jump on live if you want to stay here.
Okay.
All right.
All righty. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. Thank you guys for coming on.
You are. Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
And so now we'll transition into the final segment, which is our love segment. Again. And let me give my music a chance to play. Come on, Eric. You need a little. So let's jump into it. Because I want to be able to share some information. And I talked a little bit at the top of the show about art and how art during the rise of the civil rights movement and then straight into what we could call like the nationalist era or the Pan-Africanist movement or Black liberation movement. There's a lot of different terms that we could probably call it, but still we would term it the fight for Black people and our continued quest for equality and humanity in the United States. The arts played an equally important part in that movement and in those movements. And as I was thinking back to it, and as I was I always like to do a little bit of research, I was thinking about some of the poets that became really, really well known during that time. And I remember as a young person reading the poetry of some of those poets. I remember reading Nikki Giovanni, and I remember reading and I don't know if I say her name right, but Ntozake Shange. I remember reading and listening to Gil Scott Heron. And I remember that the things that they were talking about at that time, as a young person, I did not necessarily know exactly the ins and outs, but because I was completely immersed in the environment, I knew that it was speaking directly to my experience. And I knew that it was speaking directly to the actions and the experiences of my parents and my family members, because it was familiar and it was constantly, it was almost like how they say, like, part of the soundtrack of your life, the things that they were talking about and the feelings and the vibes and the words that they were using were all speaking directly and narrating directly into my home and the homes of my family members and the homes of those who we were surrounded by. And so I kind of looked back to see some of the actual factuals on some of this. And one of the things that I learned and that I didn't know, because I don't profess to be a literature scholar, I just love art. And so I like to share what I have learned and experienced about art. And so one of the things that I did not know was that Elaine Brown, who was from 1974 to 1977, she was the only female woman to be the chairman of the Black Panther Party. But I did not know that she was also a poet. And so I thought that that was really interesting. She actually has a very famous poem called Seize the Time, which then a year later was the title to Bobby Seale's published work that was told the story of the Black Panthers. And so that was an interesting fact to me. And I really encourage people, if you're not familiar with Elaine Brown, if you're not familiar with Nikki Giovanni, go look them up. And the other thing that I learned was that I was familiar with Amiri Baraka, and I remember that at the time of all of the political action that was going on at that time, there was a parallel movement, and I kind of learned a little bit about that, but there was a parallel movement going on that he actually started. And it was I wrote it down because I had to make sure that I was being factual. I'm going to find it in my notes, but he basically started and I put it in the resources that Afiba's going to show, but he started the actual counter poetry movement that was going on at the same time. And so there, from his organization, you see some of the really well-known poets coming directly out of Amiri Baraka's organization. At that time, you also had the Watts Prophets. At that time, you also had James Baldwin still writing at that time. And James Baldwin kind of spans back towards the civil rights movement, but he's also prolific enough that he was still writing up through the nationalist era. And so then there's also someone who is also still super prolific that a lot of people are familiar with her works, and that's Audre Lorde. And I was reading about Audre Lorde, and I was kind of familiarizing. I had heard about her, and I read some of her work during my time in college, but I did not necessarily grow up being familiar with her, and I didn't necessarily, so she wasn't part of my inherent bank of knowledge. And so I did read up a little bit about her. And one of the things that I read that I thought was super interesting, she wrote a poem, because she does poetry, she does prose, she does nonfiction. She is also not just a prolific writer in the genre of just Black nationalism, but also lesbian and queer rights, and women's rights, Black women's rights. So she's a pretty heavy hitter in the realm of Black poetry and literature, and just a heavy hitter in the realm of literature in general. I don't even want to marginalize her greatness in that way. But she started writing in 1968. But in 1978, she wrote this poem called Power. And I read the poem and I had to take a pause and take a breath because it was so heavy. I was not expecting it. I read the story behind it. They had an interview about her, an interview with her, and she said that there was a case. And again, this is all talking about how things sort of cycle forward. But had heard there was a case going on in 1978. There was a police shooting of a 10-year-old Black girl, and she was driving, and she said that she heard that the officers had been acquitted in the midst of her driving. And the quote was that a kind of fury rose up in me. The sky turned red. I felt so sick. I felt as if I would drive the car into a wall, into the next person I saw. So I pulled over. And so the poem Power is the result of all of the feelings that flowed through her at that moment. And she took to pen and wrote the poem Power. And so I would say, I would encourage you to go read it, just because, again, how does art support us when we are going through times of turmoil? We talked a little bit about it before, but we talked about it from the standpoint of visual art. It's heavy and it's actually kind of scary to me. So I had to pause when I was reading it. And so that was kind of an unusual experience for me because I had never read a poem that I thought was scary. And so, but that in and of itself, someone to have the command of the spoken word and literature to be able to transform something so emotional, turn it into a poem that has the power to scare you. And so fast forward to today, how are we utilizing art? Who are our spoken word artists? And I must admit, at this point in my life, I have not kept up with spoken word. I did in the 80s and when I was a little bit younger. But I believe that I will probably go back and start looking to see what our poets are saying. I encourage you to. And if you guys are familiar with some of our really powerful contemporary poets, I know that within the music, I'm a hip hop fan. I look at that as my form of poetry. I was looking at and listening to a little bit of Dead Prez. Of course, there are some singers and there are some groups. One of the groups that was started in the 70s and continued today is Sweet Honey and the Rock. This all women's group who they have sung folk songs and resistance music over a span of probably over 30, 40 years. And what they do is they turn, as their members start to get a certain age, they replace them, or I guess when the women choose no longer to be in the group, they bring in new women, but it is a tradition. So the group itself stays the same, but there's new members that come in. But they are folk singers, resistant song singers. And then one that I did find that's contemporary is called Resistance Revival Chorus. I found them on Instagram and I quite enjoyed their music as well. And so during these times of emotional anguish or uncertainty, we still have our artists, we still have our poets and our singers and our dancers and our painters who help to support us through through their craft and help to support us to move forward. And so with that, we have our art, and at the same time, our love. I wanted to have Raziya and Terry on. We talk about how they are supporting each other and building relationship during the shutdown. But I also wanted to talk about today specifically love as action, and very specifically political action. How do you show love for your people? By getting involved. And so I wanted to share some resources for those of you who are wondering, how do I get involved? What can I do? Some people are going to be protesters, and some people are going to get out in the streets, and they're going to lift their voices and be with the people in the streets. But some people, that may not be either what they're into, or that may be just one of the things that they want to do. And so with that, I definitely wanted to share how you can get involved. Some of the things that I have been seeing and researching about this, what comes up quite often is donating. If you're in a position to donate to community bail funds. And that's important because it's important in the immediate for those who are protesting and they get put in jail. They need help and support in getting out. But also, we have heard the stories of people who get arrested and they get put into the penal system and they can't get out because they can't afford it. And then they're caught in the cycle of incarceration, because while they're in jail, they may get into a situation where they get into a fight, and now they are there's additional charges brought up, and now they're in a cycle in a system who really doesn't have any intentions on letting them out in the first place. So donate to a community bail fund. There are other organizations. There is what you see on your screen right now. It's called Campaign Zero. Campaign Zero is an organization that they are dedicated to working on policy solutions. And so in their work, they basically use the data. They go to find out what actually is working or what works to end police violence. And they have a graphic that they have on their page. If you scroll up, you'll be able to see they have 10 actual things, actual documented solutions that can work to end police brutality. Go to Campaign Zero, read up on it, find out what is it that's working and how can I get involved in one of those things. They talk about ending windows policing, community representation, and for-profit policing. All of these different things, limiting the use of force. So we see all of these things as data-based solutions in the time of big data. Here's something that data has shown is working. Another organization is the National Police Accountability Project. They were created in 1999 as a nonprofit law association, a nonprofit law organization. They're really just focused on holding accountability, holding law enforcers and their employers accountable under the Constitution and the laws of the United States. So both of these organizations are focused on police reform and policy. The other thing that you can do if you want to get involved is sign the petitions. Colorofchange.org. If you've never gone to their site, they frequently have petitions for various different kinds of causes. So people who are environmental activists, people who are economic activists, and all those different things. You'll find different petitions, but colorofchange.org, they have a petition up right now. You can text 55156 and text the word Floyd in the text box. And that will take you directly into the petition at colorofchange.org. The other thing that you can do, if you can call Mayor Frey. He is the mayor in Minneapolis. His phone number is 612-673-2100. You can email him at citizeninfo at Hennepin, HENNEPIN.US. You can email him, you can call him and tell him he needs to arrest and charge all of the officers that were involved, not just one. All of those police officers should be arrested. You can also email the county attorney. His name is Mike Freeman. His number is 612-348-5550. That is the county attorney. Tell him, arrest those cops, bring them up on charges. If you go to the NAACP, they have resources there. They have letters that you can use to do a letter writing campaign. If you go to the ACLU, they have scripts. So if you don't know what to say, there's a script there that you can use to read when you make these phone calls. And then, as usual, there are always even smaller community-based organizations that are out here that are helping the people on a regular basis. If you want to get involved in some kind of way, something that will have a lasting effect, something that will directly affect communities of color and Black people specifically, look for organizations that deal with food insecurity. Look for organizations that deal with addiction. Look for organizations that deal with mental health and education. Those organizations consistently and constantly need help. They need your dollars. They need your volunteer time if you have it. They need you to spread the word. And we do those things and we get involved in those things for what's going on right now, but also to have lasting effects beyond today. Because the name of the game and the point of all of this is that we want an end to police brutality, not just for one and not just in one area, but for all of Black people, all of marginalized communities. And then the other resource that I had. Oh, and the other thing that I wanted to say, and I didn't write it down here because it's constantly in the forefront of my brain, is that as you look at all of these different organizations to support, or as you're out here looking for organizations to support, you have to go and vote. You must vote. You must vote, you must vote. And for those of us who feel, those of you who feel like the presidential elections don't matter, then I would encourage you to get involved in your local elections. A lot of these things happen in these small towns. Do you go to your local elections? Do you know who your local councilmen are? Do you know who your local, in DC we call them like mochas, and the different people who work right in your specific region of where you live. Get involved in your local politics. Go down to your city council meetings. Go down to your city hall meetings. Find out what's going on. Are the people who live in your neighborhood representing your interests, and are you holding them accountable? So yes, we want to vote in the presidential election because the stakes are high, but for those of you who are having a difficult time seeing how that big picture relates to you, let's zero in on the narrow picture that is right in your backyard. Get involved and vote. Go online. If you Google, how can I help? Right now, how can I help the cause of police brutality? How can I help the cause of food insecurity? You will find resources. You will find resources. You will find ways that you can help. If you go on Instagram, you will find organizations. I even connected with an organization that deals with sobriety for Black women, called Sober Black Girls Club. They're looking for people who have been battling addictions, who can support other women, who can do donations so that they can continue with their food donations. So there's so many different ways that we can be involved, get involved. That's what they did in the 70s. That's what they did during, if you admire Black Panthers, if you admire what was going on at that time, if you admire Tupac Shakur, if you admire Dead Prez, if you admire Mos Def, most of those people were raised during a time and by individuals who were organized, who were involved. They made phone calls, they knocked on doors, they got committed to a cause that moved the needle right there in their own communities, right where they lived. And so that's what I needed to be able to share with you all today. I wanted to share with you that art can help heal our hearts, can help to get the message out, can help to support us as we move through this difficult and emotional time. And at the same time, love is what will sustain us. Love of our people, and using our political action and using our voices as a form of love to continue the fight for justice for Black people. And so to that end, that's my time. I enjoyed spending this Sunday with you. Thank you once again for tuning into Art Loves Fashion. I hope to see you again next Sunday from 5 to 6. And if you jumped on at the tail end of this show, I invite you to come onto YouTube, where this episode and all the other episodes are. My YouTube channel is Sharonda Irving. My Instagram is Sharonda Irving. My Facebook is Sharonda Davila-Irving. And so you can come back next week and live stream with us, or you can watch the shows on the YouTube channel. At any rate, stay safe, love on somebody, find a way to get involved, and I'll see you next week.
Welcome to Art Loves Fashion. I'm your host, Sharonda Irving. I'm an image consultant, professional developer, art curator and collector, a wife and a mom. This show, Art Loves Fashion, is about, you guessed it, art, love, and fashion. We'll be meeting new people, trying interesting things, and hopefully learning something new. Sounds kind of vague, right? That's because I want you to join me on Sundays at 5 o'clock as we take a journey of all things creative and beautiful with art, loves, fashion.